Worst cooler ever. Hey guys, so today we're going to be taking a look at this R185 CCSX 120 volt circular saw from Evolution. Full disclosure, I got this tool for free from one of their sales reps. They saw my channel and asked me if I would be interested in taking a review of this circular saw. I said sure, why not. The only stipulation is that I go ahead and use it in the project and then give an overview of my review at the end of the project. Good, bad, or indifferent. They said they were fine with it, so I thought, why not? I obviously don't do a lot of woodworking, as you can see from my channel. I do a little bit of metalworking, some welding, a little bit of gardening, just random stuff like that. I have never been good at woodworking. In fact, I'm way worse at it than I am with metalworking. I'm not that good at metalworking either, but woodworking has not been something that I have usually tried to do. That being said, I do a few projects out in the garden every once in a while that require me to do some woodworking. So I think today that's what I'm going to use this saw for. I'm actually going to go ahead and create a new compost bin, a little enclosed compost bin, because my old one is falling apart. So I thought this would be a good way to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and create one using some cedar planks and some cedar rough cut board that I got from Home Depot a little while ago. So I thought this would be the first good way to use this tool. I don't think there's going to be any metal involved in there unless I cut through a screw or a nail, which I'm assuming this saw can handle that from what it says. So we'll take a look at that, get started on the project, and as I mentioned before, this was sent to me free from Evolution, but I will give you a review as to how it works once I'm done with this review. Obviously, as I mentioned, I'm not good at woodworking, so bear with me. All right, we'll get started. All right, let's see what's inside. This thing looks like it's been opened already. Not really sure if I got a refurb model or what, but we'll take a look. All right, first thing's the blade. Standard all-around blade. This is for mild steel, aluminum, wood, and plastic. So I'm pretty familiar with these blades. I actually have a few Evolution products, and I actually like them really a lot. So this looks like a standard blade. Hasn't been used. It's brand new in package, sealed, good. All right, these appear to be the guides that I see on the packaging. This is if you're cutting long strips of wood like plywood or OSB or anything like that. I don't think we'll be using those today, but it's good to have those. All right, instruction manual. I know this is a little guide that I've seen on other saws. And then the saw itself. Ooh. So guys, just some disclosure here. I actually don't even own a circular saw at this point in time. As I said, I don't do a lot of woodworking, so I've never really had a need for one. I usually use my chop saw, which can cut through metal or metal or wood, and that's from Evolution as well. I do love that saw. That's the Rage 2. I also have a Rage 3, and love both of those little items. So I've never really had a need for a circular saw. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to review this, get familiar with this, and try not to kill myself with trying to learn how to use this thing. First impressions, feels pretty sturdy. Nice rubber grip. Seems free moving. It's already at an angle for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see what this is. Oh, okay, so this sets the angle of your cut. Don't know if you can see that. So it goes from 0 to 45. Go ahead and tighten that down. I'm guessing one of these is your depth guide. I'll have to read the instruction manual. So I'll read that and then take a look at this, and then we'll get started after that. But right now, first impression is, feels pretty good. So cast aluminum as far as I can tell. Rubberized grip is pretty hefty feeling. Saw itself, I don't feel any, doesn't feel cheap at all. Oh, there's also an Allen key on this side. I guess that is for installing your saw blade. Yep, fits there. So also another note, guys, I made sure not to go online on any YouTube channels and that we're doing a review of this saw. I just wanted to take a look at it from my perspective first. give you my feedback, and then, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. I didn't want to be influenced, so I'm just taking a look at this from a new user's perspective, and then I'll go ahead and once I'm done with the video, I'll actually go and take a look at some of the reviews and see how far off I was. Anyway, all right, let's get started on working on this after I read the instructions. Putting the blade in was really easy. All it was basically taking this little Allen key, unscrewing the little arbor that's there. It's already, apparently this arbor, you can flip it over and it can accommodate a 1" or 5/8, but it's already on the right side for the blade. So all you need to do is just take the blade, slide her in here, go ahead and put your cover back on, make sure that it gets seated properly. Take the screw, tighten it down, and then there's a little lock on the back right here that you use to lock the blade as you tighten it down with the included Allen key. So just give that a little turn, make sure it's tight, you know, check to make sure the blade isn't wobbling or anything like that, and theoretically you should be set to go. All right, so today I probably won't be using this track, but I did go ahead and read the instructions and then played around with it a little bit just to see how it goes together. So it's actually a pretty easy design. They've got these metal bars in here that slide on additional tracks, and as you can see, there are little Allen screws here that you just tighten down, and then you slide this together and then tighten down the Allen screws, oops, on that side to make sure that everything stays together. So once you do that, yeah, then you got a track. It's pretty sturdy. And there's a third piece to this, so it actually forms a pretty long track. The only thing I noticed here, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, that I'm not sure if it's the alignment of this. I don't think it will affect how the blade actually follows this track. But as you can see here, there are some definite gaps here, and it's not consistent all the way across. I'm not sure if it's the cutting process or the way it was designed, but you know, right now I don't see any. It feels like these little guardrails kind of transition smoothly. There's just a little bit of burr there, which hopefully the saw doesn't get caught up on. So that might be just something for Evolution to look at, but again, I'm not going to be using this today, so I don't know how it's going to operate, or I don't think I'm going to use it, but we'll see. Maybe in another video I'll take a review of this and see how this works. But it is a nice addition to have a track that you can use to cut a larger piece of plywood or a large board with. So it's actually a pretty nice little addition, and it's aluminum, so aside from the little gap, I don't really see any problems with this, but we'll take a look at that later. In case you're wondering, yes, it still cuts through screws. So as you can see, this thing still cuts through screws. These are hardened screws actually for decks, so they're not, you know, just a soft penny nail or anything like that. I didn't have any doubt that it would still go through these. Evolution saws have been pretty good about always going through metal, so I'm not really going to test out the metal cutting skills or abilities of this saw today, because I've got two other Evolution saws that are much better suited to doing steel work. That's not to say that I probably won't use this in the future to go through sheet metal and large, not plate. I wouldn't use it for plate. I'd use a plasma cutter for that, but for sheet steel and expanded metal and large tracks of steel like that, yeah, I wouldn't have any problem going through this. But today I'm just going to use this thing to create a little compost bin, and so I'll take you through that process, and you won't be seeing me doing a lot of this, cutting through screws in wood. At least I hope not. I'm a pretty bad woodworker, so actually that's probably a lie. You may see this quite a bit today. Anyway, we'll get started. That was insane. I didn't even feel that go through the wood, to be quite honest. I mean, this thing is a pretty hefty little unit. But the weird thing is, there's a definite electrical wire smell. I don't know how to describe that. And I did notice when I let off the trigger, there was a little spark that came out the end of this machine. So let me see if I can do that again. Yeah, there is definitely something there. So let me see if I can get a better angle of that. Probably not safe to do this, but we'll see. Yeah, that's like a little spark in there. That is kind of weird. That's probably just the contact points, but typically you don't want to see that in your tools. But we'll continue using this, free tool. We'll see if it burns up. But as far as the cut, not actually bad. I mean, considering the fact that it was probably me that was off the line, but it was a straight line at least. A little nubbin at the end, which I think was my fault too, but nice clean cut. Overall, not bad. As I said, I really didn't even feel when it touched the wood, so I'm not I've used circular saws before, and usually you can feel like the first time it bites in, but this thing is pretty heavy. And again, this is cedar, so it's kind of a light wood anyway, but so far so good, aside from the spark. So weirdly enough, the spark is gone. So I'm not really sure if that's because there were just some metal shavings in there that got blown out as I keep using this thing, but I'm gonna keep an eye on that. Seems to be working fine so far. So that saw made really quick work of just building out a basic frame. Nothing fancy here, just did some cuts. Obviously kind of glued them together and then screwed them together, make sure that I've got extra support. And as I mentioned before, all of this is cedar, so it's fairly easy to go together. So the wood was easy to cut, easy to screw into, no splitting, nothing like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and frame on the outside with some of this stuff. And basically this is just 6-inch cedar planking that you use for your fence. So as I said, I'm trying to keep this as cheap as possible. You could go with pine, but I found that pine actually rots a lot easier. Cedar will at least give you a few years in the ground, but kind of up to you, depending on the cost and how long you plan to use this thing. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start cutting these planks, or cedar planks, fence planks, whatever you call them, and then I'm gonna frame the outside of this thing. Alright guys, so here's the compost bin all completed now, and it's in its final resting spot. I went ahead and moved out the old compost bin, which is over here. As you can see, that thing is rotted out and looking pretty rough. It was about 6 years old, I think, and I used pine to make this, or at least pieces of pine and some cedar. And all the pieces of pine, pretty much, that's it right there. Just pretty much eaten out by ants and other little vermin. So I'm gonna go ahead and give that a spray down with some bug spray and then throw it in the trash. And I can't tell if that's a black widow that I just saw moving over there. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely spray this with some bug spray and throw it in the trash. Anyway, back to the compost bin. It's in its final resting spot, and it's a lot bigger than the other one. As you see, I went ahead and loaded it up with the contents from the old compost bin, and I've still got a lot of space left in here, so that's good. The other bin was pretty much full. As you see, I've added this little mesh on here, and so what you can do is, on any given day, I can leave this open, let it get some air, let it get some water, no little vermin can get in here because this is hardware cloth, so it's galvanized steel. if it starts raining too much or starts snowing or the weather is really nasty, I can always close this down, so I can always, you know, decide what I want to do. It's pretty nice. I like the little action on it. So at night I'll always close this down just because I don't want any little vermin trying to get in here. Not that they could anyway, unless it's like a bear or something, which we don't have here. At least I hope we don't. Anyway, so this was the project. You know, the Evolution saw made it really easy to do this. I didn't really have any plans in mind. I just did some rough sketches. Went ahead and drew it up on paper really quickly and then just started cutting and screwing things together and nailing things together, and came out pretty good for my opinion. I don't put too much effort into these woodworking projects just because I know that in about another probably 5-6 years I might have to replace this one, so there's not a lot of craftsmanship that needs to go into this. I just need to do it really quick, and the saw made that job really easy. So we'll go back inside and I'll do a review of what I think of the saw and get out of this heat because it is pretty hot today. And it's only spring, so we'll take you back inside. I mentioned before, I'm not a woodworking guy, and I'm planning to use this saw for woodworking purposes going forward. That being said, I did actually test it on a piece of 1/8 inch plate steel. It cut through it fine. Unfortunately, I forgot that my camera was in picture mode, so I did a whole video on that and realized I was just taking pictures of it. But I will say that it did go through the plate, no problem. Again, it's not really thick plate. It's similar to this stuff that's underneath here. Actually, it was only a 4-inch piece, and it cut through it with no problem. I didn't have any, I didn't have any doubt that it would. These Evolution blades are pretty good about going through steel and aluminum. I've used them in the past on my chop saw for many years, and I've never had a problem with them. So. Again, I only went through 1 sheet of steel with it. It mowed through it without any problem. The motor didn't bog down or anything like that, and the blades are all in good shape, so no chipping on the carbide teeth. As I said, I'm using this circular saw more just for testing out, you know, how it works, and then also probably planning to use it mostly for just rough woodworking projects more than anything else. So I wasn't really concerned about how it works with steel, although later on in the future I'll probably use it to cut through some mild steel sheet, just really long runs of it that won't fit on my chop saw. But I'm going to go through some of the things that I like on this saw and then go through some of the things that I don't like. Well, so first thing that I like is obviously the design of the saw itself. It is an aluminum frame. It has a very sturdy feel to it. It doesn't feel cheap at all. When you look at it out of the box, I thought a lot of these things were plastic, but in actuality they're cast aluminum, which I think is pretty much a standard in a lot of higher end saws these days. The saw itself, I think when I looked at the manual, it said it's around 11 pounds. It has a good feel to it. I like it. Some people may like a lighter saw. Some people actually like the heavier saw, such as myself. I think that's just personal preference. I did go to Home Depot and pick up a few of the other circular saws there from the other brands like Rigid, Milwaukee, DeWalt. I think it's just depending on what you like. Some of the saws were obviously lighter than this and some were obviously heavier. So again, all comes down to personal preference there. One thing that I do really like a lot on here is this handle grip. It's probably one of the better handle grips out there in my opinion. The only one that came close to it was actually Home Depot's brand, which is the Rigid brand. They have a similar look and feel, only theirs is a little bit smoother and a little bit slipperier. This one has a nice rubberized grip. It has a very solid feel to it, and it has almost kind of a little tacky feel to it, which your hand can grip onto. The only one that was a little bit better than this was one by, I think it was Makita. They actually had a D-grip handle, which you can actually grip onto, but again, it comes down to personal preference. One of the other things I like about these saws is they come with all the tools that you need as far as Allen keys. I think there was another one that was in the box. So anytime you need to loosen any screws for, working on the saw itself or changing the blades, you have those. So nice little feature. It's good that they add those things in there. They obviously have a dust collector in there along with some other things, but I won't get into those. One of the other things I like is some of the little handles for changing the angle of the saw. They actually feel nice. They're plastic, but they don't feel cheap. I guess is the best way to put it. Let's see, the other thing that I like is there's a really long handle, long cord that's attached to this. It says it's around 13 feet. I actually didn't measure it, but it is almost twice my height, so I would assume I'm 6 feet. That should be over. that looks pretty accurate to me. So, aside from that, obviously I mentioned that I love the fact that they're still using the Evolution blades. The multi-purpose blade has always served me well in the past. This is a 7¼ inch blade. One thing I will note with Evolution tools is that typically in order to get the metal cutting ability on these saws is they usually have to reduce the RPMs on these saws to make sure that you're not, going through steel too quickly. What that means is that for any of your finer woodworking projects, you might not want to use these blades. This blade is actually pretty thick, and I have found in the past that whenever I use these on, finer grain woods that you want to get a really clean cut on, they don't do as good a job as some of the higher end models. At least that's my opinion. For working with metal, they're great. Working with wood, doing rough cuts like what I did on this project, no problem. But if you're looking for a true woodworking saw, not sure if you'd want to use these blades. But then again, you're probably not doing fine furniture with a circular saw. So just take that into account. So aside from that, as I mentioned, everything else on this saw seems to work well. I'll go into some of the things that I wasn't, well, I wouldn't say a fan of, but we'll go over some things that I didn't like, as well as some of these things that confused me, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on this saw. All right. Some of the things that confuse me, and I think it's only specific to this model, and again, this model is the R185 CCSX, which to me is the one that basically comes with these tracks. So there's 3 of them in this box, and as I showed you earlier in the video, when you line them up, the cut quality on, and I won't put them again together, but you'll notice that there's some little gaps here. I don't know if you can see that, but if you refer back to the earlier part of the video, you can see there's some obvious gaps there when these things line up, which I don't think will really cause a problem too much, but just for a tool that's going out the door, I think they would like to probably do a little bit more quality control on some of these cuts. Again, you're a company that makes saws, so hopefully if you're cutting a sheet of metal, it would be a little bit straighter than that. So that's just a note. Probably not the best first impression out of the box, but again, if it works, it works. The next thing I have an issue with these tracks, again, and I didn't use these for this project, but I probably will in the future. But I did notice when I was playing with it a little bit, that this is actually a 40-inch track. It's 13 3/8 inches each one of these pieces. So it's a little bit over, it's a little bit over 40 inches, or maybe a little bit under. My math is really bad. But anyway, I think when you would want to use these tracks is when you're cutting a piece of plywood, and sheets of plywood come in 4x8 sheets, which means that you're going to be about a few inches short if you try to use this track. I'm not really sure what the reasoning was behind them cutting this short by a few inches versus making it a full 48 inches. Obviously it fits in the box really well, but you can make the box a little bit larger. So I'm not really sure what the logic here on Evolution's part was, but again, that's just a little takeaway note for them in the future. You might want to add a few more inches to these tracks and then allow people to cut through an entire sheet of plywood cleanly. I know metal also comes in. You can get metal cut to any size you want, but typically when I get it, it's either 48 or 36 inch sheets. If it's cheaper to get the 48 inch sheet and I can fit it into my vehicle, I'll do that. So you're going to run into the same problem when you're trying to use the track on larger sheets of metal or wood. So that's my take right there. The next thing that, again, as I mentioned, I didn't really go online to do a comparison review video. I didn't look at any other review videos for this saw just to not cloud my judgment. But one thing I did notice while I was looking online was the cost of this saw. So this one right here is the R185 CCSX, and this is the one that comes with these tracks. The saw below this one is the R185 CCS, and that doesn't come with a track. Now, from what I can tell, the only difference between these two saws is this one's slightly lighter, the amperage is the same, and this one can cut at a 60-degree angle versus this one can only be moved to a 45-degree angle, and then this one also has the track. The difference in price though is quite significant. I think this one was 140 something, like 140, 150, and this one was around 80. So if you're buying the saw just to use the track, you kind of have to make that call on your end if you think that it's worth that much more money, especially with the track being a few inches short from being able to cut a full sheet of plywood. So again, I'll leave that up to you guys as a decision point, but I haven't got a chance to review this saw, but from the specs on there, it looks pretty similar to the saw that I've been using, and for $70 or $80 on this model, I think that would actually be a great deal. And I'm going to leave a coupon code in the bottom of this post. As I mentioned, Evolution did send this saw over to me for free, so they did offer me a 5% coupon for anyone that wants to use it. I think that same coupon is on their site right now, so you can apply that to any saw that you want or any of their products. So I'll leave that again in the description. Feel free to use it. If you don't want to, I think their site is also offering 5% off right now. So I think for the money, if I had the option and I was having to pay for this, I would go for the R185 CCS model, because if it's similar to the saw that I've used, it's a pretty capable little saw. It cuts through wood fine. It will cut through steel fine. For all intents and purposes, I think it's a good value for the money. For $140 or $150 for just getting an extra set of track, I'm gonna say that I probably wouldn't buy this on my own. If it was discounted heavily, maybe. But again, that's just my thought. Other people may have different thoughts on this, but I just wanted to give you my opinion. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for this project. I'm probably going to start using this saw for cutting some sheets of steel down the line, but you'll get to see those in some of the projects that I do going forward. Just wanted to give you this opinion, and then hopefully you enjoyed the project that I did. It's not my typical metalworking project, and it's not a garden update, but it is related to the garden, so hopefully you found it enjoyable, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them. Alright guys, you have a good one. I like it. I like it a lot.